When should we get over there?
The Rio Santiago is just one of the many big rivers that feed the monster river Amazon. Beginning here, where the jungle merges into the Andes Mountains, the rivers flow east for 3,000 miles across the whole of South America. 500 years ago, the conquistadors from Spain traveled here in search of gold and silver treasure. This has always been a place of danger and adventure. But now a new expedition begins to find some caves deep in the forest that might have been visited by creatures from another world. Yes, people are actually journeying down the Amazon, looking for flying saucers.
We're at 17,000 feet. Everything was routine. Then my co-pilot yelled, "What's that? Port 10 o'clock." I saw it in front of us, a bit lower, moving really fast. It stood still in the air for a second, then it vanished from the starboard wing. It was silver, and it seemed to glow, like you'd see in a comic book. After landing, we heard some Navy pilots reported exactly the same thing.
That's a typical UFO report. It happens as many as 300 times a day. The whole world is UFO crazy. South America, more so than most places. There's a strange legend in the making here. A brand new legend tailor-made for the space age. The gimmick this time is that it's about flying saucers from long ago, before the history of our world was even written. It's a funny story, so listen closely. Somewhere here in Ecuador, there's a man called Juan Moricz, who found fabulous lost caves in the Amazon jungle. Presley Norton is a local archaeologist who knows the background.
When Juan Moricz showed up here in Ecuador, the stories about the caves had been going around for some years. He, in fact, heard about the caves and what they supposedly contained from someone called Andrés Fernández Salvador. After that, Moricz went to the caves, as I understand it, then came back and made some very detailed claims about their content.
You can read about it in a paperback book called Gold of the Gods by Erich von Däniken, the popular science writer. That's how this Amazon adventure got its start. The expedition leader, a friend and admirer of Juan Moricz, is Stanley Hall.
Well, Daniel Juan Moricz has claimed to have found in Ecuador, over in the Oriente, a large subterranean cave system, which is an extension of a much larger cave system extending all the way from Colombia down to Chile and the Argentine. Inside these caves, he has claimed to have found some quite sensational objects, including a metallic library, and what he has claimed is that the library does contain evidence of contact from other planets, to the point that perhaps early humanity came from other planets.
The journey from base camp is upstream on the rain-swollen Santiago, following the route von Däniken mapped out in his book. It must be the only treasure map you can buy in Woolworths. You head for the point 3 degrees south of the equator, where the Santiago meets the Rio Cuangos. There, a jungle track should lead to the caves of Los Tayos. In his book, von Däniken describes the journey he made to the caves and the astounding revelations that awaited him there. He claims to have found more proof for his theories about gods visiting us long ago in spaceships. He backs it up with the written testimony of the mysterious Juan Moricz, a sworn statement lodged with the authorities in Ecuador.
2, 3. 2, 3.
I, Juan Moricz, in the region of Maroña, Santiago, within the Republic of Ecuador, have found objects of great cultural and historical value to mankind. The objects form a metal library containing what could be a history of man on Earth, and are distributed in caves throughout the region. It took the armies of 2 countries to mount this expedition. When the thick rain clouds clear, they can ferry in the heavy supplies to keep 60 soldiers and scientists alive for 4 weeks. The funny thing is that most people on the trip aren't really concerned about Von Daniken's theories. The scientists have other good reasons for being here, because this area is truly natural forest, and life on this planet is still being studied in traditional ways, even by the most modern scientists.
On the planet itself, in fact, there are still huge areas which we hardly know anything about. And particularly this expedition with so many scientists participating in different fields.
There's still a great deal to be learned. For instance, in this area, we don't even know what species are living here, never mind what they're doing, where they're living, or how much they're eating. It's a very complex system.
Analysing the plants in the field here, we've got a fair chance that some 10 to 15% of everything that we collect is going to be completely new to science.
The tropical forest was the first home of man on this earth. But these claims of Von Daniken add something completely new to the usual version of how we got here. It goes something like this. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors were visited by beings from another world. They dropped into the forest in their flying machines, just like this expedition. They altered our development by special techniques of breeding and by genetic surgery. When they flew away, they left behind the first human beings. Those ancient visitors are the true missing link in our evolution, the real reason why we look for our gods in the sky. It's a fantastic explanation, but it has its believers, and they are trying to convince the rest of us that this world had a true Garden of Eden. This jungle might seem a strange place to pick, but little bits of scientific fact help the theory along. 2 of our main foods, maize and the potato, originated in these forests. That means a very long and advanced human presence here. For Von Daniken, the world is full of that kind of evidence for this amazing version of the past. Juan Moritz's caves are just one little part of the story. Even as the search for the caves goes on, other trails are being followed. High up in the Andes Mountains, in the town of Cuenca, Stanley Hall is searching out an old Catholic priest called Padre Crespi. He is one of the heroes of Von Daniken's book. He says the old man has objects taken from the caves by local Indians over the years. Over 40 years, the old priest has gathered together a backyard museum in his orphanage church. Moricz has told Stanley Hall there are certain special pieces to look out for, like in all the best treasure trails. A golden plaque, part of the message from the gods, with strange symbols on it, and a model of a dome carved in stone.
Well, this is quite remarkable because it looks...
Pure gold, the old man shouts. Pure gold.
Any archaeologist who has studied the Sumerian, Babylonian...
El faraón, no, ese es el faraón, no, el rey de Babilonia.
No conventional archaeologist would come to a backyard in South America looking for objects from the Babylonia of 5,000 years ago.
Syrian style, you can tell.
Vaya, Cuba.
Quiero la placa metálica.
Esa es la placa. 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 Esa es la placa.
Otra placa.
No.
This shape. This shape.
¿Qué placa?
A placa with the hole in the center. La placa with the... Here of it.
For Stanley Hall, this is the big moment. Here, and in the caves of Los Tayos, his faith in Juan Moricz will be put to the test.
No. Ya cuando Cristóbal Colón había descubierto la América, ya no.
Some of them are quite remarkable objects.
Padre Crespi is like a wise man of old. The weight of so much knowledge seems to be driving him crazy. He raves about a biblical world of floods and disasters. Everywhere you turn in Van Daniken's world, the line between fact and fiction seems harder to make out. This old priest is real enough, but what has he got to do with flying saucers?
Esta está hecha ahora, esta. La Cueva de los Tayos entre los 200.
¿Dónde figurín?
This is the dome Van Daniken claims came from the caves. He says it proves ancient people knew all about modern engineering.
No llegan ustedes, ellos crudan.
But old Padre Crespi isn't too interested in other people's
The dome
theories.
that appeared in The Gold of the Gods book by Eric Van Daniken.
No, Von Daniken, nada.
Nada.
Von Daniken is nothing, he says, nada. Absolutely nobody. This is one of those few times when a character from a book gets to speak out against its author. Back in the jungle, the caves have been found. They exist. And there's no doubt it's the right caves. Close beside them, the remains of Moritz's old camp have also been found. This is where he pitched his tent when he discovered the caves in July 1969. July 69, while the rest of us were watching American astronauts land on the moon for the very first time. And the caves look big. Maybe even as big as promised. The expert caving team got the first look at this brand new underground world. The only way in is down the main shaft, a slow two-man dangle at the end of a wire cable. 14 feet a minute they descend, down a vertical shaft 160 feet deep. The caves are awesome. Even in the first hours of exploration, the massive scale of the system is confirmed. Easily the biggest in South America. Mile upon mile of unexplored tunnels. Huge chambers and passageways. Strangely, the place is buzzing with life. Birds, animals, insects, all surviving in the darkness. More than enough for the scientists, even without the mad claims of Juan Moricz and company ringing in their ears.
Well, Juan Moritz's claims are that there are all sorts of artifacts, mostly made of gold, deposited in these caves by members of a lost interplanetary civilization who had arrived here on Earth in flying saucers, and they deposited a vast library of gold plaques with all their accumulated wisdom in this cave and other places, and then just shot off into the air in a flying saucer and let the rains come.
The moon shines shines down on the little camp in the jungle, reminding everyone of the weird connection between out there in space and the big hole in the ground under their feet. There is another reminder.
What is going on right
Neil Armstrong, the first man to stand on the moon, is scheduled for a visit to the caves.
So if I was Neil Armstrong, I'd be down here like shot, because although he may have travelled a lot, he is unlikely to get to this part of Ecuador again. So, of course,
they don't talk about it much, but everyone has the crazy Van Daniken stuff at the back of their minds. Is it just science fiction dressed up as fact? It all comes down to one simple but dramatic choice. Either you believe that our little planet is part of a living universe with other worlds and other beings for us to meet in an exciting future, or you choose to believe the complete opposite. Accept that we are totally alone in space, the only planet in the whole universe with intelligent creatures roaming its surface. There is one other choice. Don't think about it at all.
Are there any other burning issues?
The Spanish conquistadors died in this jungle in their thousands. It was a hostile, unknown world with the terrors of yellow fever, cholera, dysentery, savage Indians. But today, the same jungle doesn't frighten anyone. So what's changed? The answer is that we have. In a short few hundred years, we've made ourselves more comfortable on this planet, and we're so new here, we still treat the Earth with the curiosity of visitors.
God, we got a huge bat here. This is, I think, about the biggest. This bat here is the most common bat in the caves, and it's particularly interesting because it feeds on nectar. It's estimated that...
Where did we learn the trick of treating the world as if we just dropped in to make a report on it?
Follow the flower, and it just peeps out there, and this is partly to protect the flower from nectar stealers. So it wants this barb throat, which is a pollinator, to go to it.
The fact is, this living planet was well underway before men showed up and decided to take charge.
About 5 or 6 hours watching so far. It looks as if it may be any sort of sole pollinator of this.
That's very interesting. We've opened one of these flowers up and there's very little nectar.
And we're still finding out how the whole place really works.
As the Bible says, all flesh is grass. All living organisms ultimately depend on the sun's energy, and this is normally absorbed by green plants, photosynthesizing, building up complicated organic compounds which contain the sun's energy. Then herbivorous animals can feed on the plants and carnivores can feed on them, and we have the old idea of the food chain. The food material is being built up on the surface in the surrounding forest and being taken into these caves, the Los Taos caves, by the oil birds in the form of fruit with which they feed their young. And this all represents energy that's come from the sun, has been built up into organic matter on the surface and carried into the cave by the oil birds.
Most people aren't interested in all the scientific details, only in the big question. Are we alone in the universe? Or are we not alone? And this is right up Mr. Van Daniken's alley. He says that any scientist can point up to the sky and show you worlds in the making. There are millions of places in outer space where our ancient visitors could have come from. Planets where life may have developed and evolved. After all, we know it happened at least once before, here on Earth. Any scientist will tell you the neat little story about how life came to this once dead planet. Slowly and simply is how life began. the rays of the sun triggering off actions in the primitive mud. The ingredients are everyday words to us now: water, carbon, sunlight. And the crudest of little plant cells began to grow. From the same primitive cells came the first stirrings of animal life. All it took was time, and from nothing, complete deadness, a living planet was born.
For me, the type of land that would typify the Earth would be tropical jungle, I think, yes. Far more species live here than any other part of the world. It's probably in an environment possibly similar to this that life really got going.
It's a beautiful planet, a beautiful living machine with everything working like clockwork. But guess what? There's one animal that doesn't fit perfectly into this Garden of Eden. More evidence for the Von Daniken Brigade, because there is a very great deal that we don't know about our own development. Scientists used to talk about the missing link. It's actually a gap in our knowledge of millions of years.
Man moved out of forest like this at a very, very early stage in his evolution. Man moved out of rainforest onto the savannas, primitive man, and that's where he really started to learn and to behave as we now do, standing on two legs, learning to use tools, hunting, etc. Left the forest behind.
Did it take outside influence to make us the way we are? So different from everything else that lives on this planet. Out of 6 million years of our own development, we have collected less than 15,000 years of history. That incredible gap of millions of years allows Von Daniken to get his foot in the door. To any challenger, he can simply say, prove it. Prove that I'm wrong. As the exploration begins back in Europe, Von Daniken is taking no chances. He tells the press we might be at the wrong caves. He mentions other caves 15 kilometers away. Moricz in Ecuador is silent and as elusive as ever. So the cave visitors are truly on their own. They do get the odd bit of news every night on the camp radio. Some terrorists are executed in Africa. England beat Australia in another test match. A farmer in Brazil sees a flying saucer. You know, the usual stuff.
So we're sliding down the Lost Terrace entrance shaft. This is a 160-foot free-hanging drop. I'm going the easy way. Now, the Indians have been coming down here so we gathered from the archaeologists, for about 3,500 years. And there's evidence that they've been down here hanging on vines, lianas, jamming pieces of wood into cracks.
So we have some proof that there is a long human involvement with these caves. The Indians have been coming down here since before the time of Moses. Paths have led here through the forest for thousands of years. And there's more. The Indians here say that the first man on earth was made down in these caves. It was from here that he emerged into the light of day for the very first time. So these caves do have links with a distant human past. We can even identify the photographs Von Daniken used in his book. The walls that he claimed were made by laser beams long ago. But no sign of flying saucers or gold yet.
Moment.
Oh, yeah.
We're getting closer, could we have a torch here? We're burning up this light all the time.
The mold, all complete.
One second.
Very, very, very interesting, very important. Like that one, I don't see. 25 years archaeologist, but like that one, I never see.
A ring! A stone ring!
To find anything down here is a joyful and exciting business. The cavers work fast and the archaeologists put their rule book to one side. In the excitement, even the languages get mixed up.
Esto viene del mar Pacífico, del océano Pacífico, desde acá.
Hey!
Yeah.
Look at that! Eagle! Whoopee! Mamma mia!
Look!
Look at this.
¿Qué quiere?
Ya, vaya, estamos tirando.
Yeah, that's the top off.
Madre mía.
Not in there.
Ya, a ver, traiga la bolsa. Traiga.
Let me come out first.
Yes. A ver, escoja.
There's a handful of jewellery there. Be careful with it.
Ahora voy a entrar yo.
Oh, you've got no V8 with it.
What sort of jewellery was it?
Can I have a look? Because you can't really see it in there. Hold the bag, John. Some very tiny bits.
Priceless stuff.
They seem to be ritual offerings left by men for their gods. And the first rough dating makes them 3,500 years old.
Now look.
Yes.
Metal. It feels like metal.
So, 1,500 years before the birth of Christ, the caves were already important enough to be a sacred offering place. And the men who made these objects and worshipped these old gods were men very much like ourselves, with their own civilization, and by then, even their own history. These men from long ago are the very ones who developed the potato and the first grain crops for us. But, like us, they felt a bit lonely on this planet. Like us, they were so very different from everything that lived, they needed their gods to keep them company. And, to relieve our loneliness, von Daniken offers us his theories and real live gods that we might even meet. These caves, he says, come to us from a time when the gods were here, on Earth, creating men. To explain it all, he simply put our old-time gods in the skies into spacesuits. It's not all that different from the way the Indians tell it. In their legends, the very first man, Evia, wakened deep in the caves. High above him, he saw the light of the sun and heard the sounds of the forest. He was still sleepy, but he started the long climb up into the world that had been made for him. The Indians here used to say that the forest went on forever, was more infinite than the sky. We know differently. In a few thousand years, we've completely changed the natural living world that took millions of years to create. Even this dense jungle doesn't fool the experts.
We've been working in this area for some time, and we're slightly disappointed with it because it's largely secondary forest. It's a sort of happy accident between man and plant, where man has moved in and cleared small areas. So what we want to do is to get out of this area, get up onto a ridge over there, and have a look at the area as it really was before man started to alter it. And that's just where we're going now.
The world can't stand much more of man's alterations. Preservation might seem like a trendy business, but it's critical too. Every day, 20,000 acres of this forest are destroyed by farming and roads and industry. Every year, 70 million more people come into the world. If this goes on, we'll only have 2 square feet of planet each in a couple of hundred years to live on and eat off. Juan Moricz says we're making a mess of the world because we don't really belong. We're truly aliens. That's another little proof of his. But it does some good if it can make us more aware of our problems. We don't know if we can ever make a success of living on this planet, no matter how we got here. Our man-made world is spreading. Are we here simply to turn the planet into one great city? If this really is the only living world, what on earth are we doing to it? Most people ignore the problems, but others find comfort believing in a future beyond our own little planet. They say our own space age is arriving just in time. Neil Armstrong blasted off in his rocket ship and became the first man to stand on our moon. That was the real start to our space age. It's only a matter of time until men from Earth begin to inhabit the universe. That's the most exciting truth of all. 10 years after his voyage, he is still someone really special. He can't stop us turning his private visit to the caves into a regal occasion.
President Tito, I came to tell of my experiences, but this time I come to learn.
We've come a long way since that first ancestor of ours picked up a club and decided to take charge. In the future, maybe the few thousand years that we've spent tied to the Earth will be forgotten in the generations of space voyaging that lie ahead. Maybe that's the way it happens. A planet makes a home for a race of men, and then, when they're ready, lets them loose into space. It's an exciting time for us, and the future promises to be even more exciting than even we can imagine. So, it makes sense that we found the first of our space-age legends right back in the Garden of Eden, or at least underneath the garden, in the caves that Juan Moricz found. The cave was named the largest chamber, Stanley Hall, after their leader. Juan Moricz, still elusive and shy of the camera, insists that his revelations will one day change the world. He says he is busy translating his finds and will reveal all in 1980. Von Daniken still mumbles about it being the wrong caves, despite our photographic proof. He has, of course, found his own pot of gold. His books have sold over 15 million copies.
Well, this is the plaque that appears in Von Daniken's book. You can get some idea of the scale of it. This particular character here, I've noticed, appears on the cheek of Chief Mayambe, who is a military head of the Shuaras down near Las Cuevas de los Tallos. No.
No hablar de Shuara.
No, Father Crosby.
Babilonia, Egipto, quiere ver fuego. La Shuara, otra película. Yo hice una gran película de los Shuara.
Sí, padre.
Pero 400 y más copias. Todos lo han querido a eso, ¿no? de Washington, ¿no? La reina de Uber estaba, insomma, fuera, pero la reina.
Padre Crespi's collection is still much of a mystery. Conventional archaeologists won't risk their reputations to come here and make sense of it all. No one will date his objects or attempt to translate the writings, and that helps to keep the legend of Los Tayos more or less intact. Legends are elusive things, even face to face. If they weren't, they wouldn't be legends.
Contains some history of a previous civilization.
Wouldn't it be perfect if it was all written down for us? If those gods of ours had in fact left us all the answers? Then we wouldn't need fancy theories and madmen and space-age fairy stories. And that's how the whole thing started. A few facts gleaned from modern science, a few wild suggestions offered as proven facts, and a world full of people desperate for something to believe in. The icing on the cake is the neat way that the Holy Bible is given a place of honor in the catalogue of proofs. It is claimed that in the Old Testament, Ezekiel, the prophet, was actually one of the first people to experience a close encounter of that famous third kind. Listen to this.
When men had begun to be plentiful on the earth, the sons of God, looking at the daughters of men, saw that they were pleasing, and resorted to them, and had children by them. These are the heroes of days gone by, the famous men. As I looked, behold, a stormy wind came out of the north, and a great cloud with brightness round about it, and a fire flashing forth continually, and in the midst of the fire, as it were gleaming bronze.
At first I didn't believe what I was seeing, and I called out to Stan, and we stood on the porch together, and we both watched it. You could make out a round outline moving slowly over the roof of the garage. The red glow was coming from beneath the thing, from the center. It just sat there for about 5 minutes. We were too scared to move.
And when the living creatures rose from the earth, the wheels rose, for the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. And when they went, I heard the sound of their wings, like the sound of many waters, like the thunder of the Almighty. And when I saw it, I fell upon my face, and I heard the voice of one that spoke.
I don't think the world's at all a special place. It's quite possible this type of world could occur elsewhere. There's no reason why not. Statistically, I think it's probable, as far as I remember. But it's just a series of coincidences, really. It started all off. It's built up into a very complex system. I guess that's what most of the scientists here are trying to look into. I don't think there's anything particularly special about it, or unique even.
The world may not be unique, but we're the first generation to realize it. It helps loosen another tie between us and our forefathers. 20 years ago, the Shuara Indians around the caves were still living their old-style life. Savage headhunters who had terrorized the Amazon for centuries. Now, for better or for worse, things have changed. We know them, and they've gotten to know us. The same thing happens all over the world. Even as we come and go on this planet, getting to know each other a little better, learning to live with one another just a little more readily. Maybe it's simply a big rehearsal for the future we'll all have beyond this planet, and for the meetings that could await us. Maybe we'll be the gods in spacesuits. Now wouldn't that make the legend of Los Tayos really worthwhile?
There's an awful lot to be learned, and also science changes very much. It's not a matter of just learning things and then that's it. The way you look at things keeps changing, so you want to know new things.
Ya.